It's a quiet afternoon. Maybe around 3:17. You're standing in the kitchen, staring at the sink. Nothing urgent is happening. No one is calling your name. No deadline is flashing red. And yet your chest feels tight, like you forgot something important. You look around. The house is normal. Your phone is silent. The day is, technically, fine. So why does it feel like too much? Sometimes this feeling shows up without a clear cause. No big event. No dramatic news. Just a heavy sense that something inside you is overflowing. What you may be experiencing is feeling overwhelmed by nothing when there isn't one obvious problem, but your inner world feels crowded anyway. In this video, I want to slowly name what that might be, why it happens, and a couple of small ways to meet it without turning it into a bigger story. Feeling overwhelmed by nothing is when your body reacts as if there's too much to handle, even though you can't point to one clear reason. It's not that life is falling apart. It's that your inside feels louder than your outside. One common reason is that your mind has been carrying small, unfinished loops for longer than you realize. They aren't dramatic. They're things like a conversation you never closed properly, a decision you postponed, a text you meant to answer thoughtfully. Each one is tiny. But your brain doesn't treat them as tiny. It keeps them slightly open, like tabs in a browser that never fully shut down. Over time, those open tabs don't scream. They hum. And even on a calm day, that hum can make you feel like you're behind on something, even when you're technically caught up. Sometimes, it comes from being the steady one for too long. You might be the person who keeps things moving. The one who remembers birthdays, double-checks details, smooths over tension in a room. You don't always talk about it. You just do it. And for a while, it feels normal. But carrying quiet responsibility takes energy. Even if no one is asking anything from you in that moment, your body may still be bracing. It can feel like pressure without a clear source, because the pressure has become your baseline. There's also a quieter reason that sits underneath all of this. For a lot of people, it starts when they learn to scan for what might go wrong. Maybe things felt unpredictable at some point. Maybe plans changed suddenly, or moods shifted quickly around you. So your mind adapted. It began looking ahead, trying to prevent surprises before they happen. That skill can be useful. But when it never turns off, even peaceful moments feel suspicious. You relax, and a part of you asks, what am I missing? So you feel overwhelmed, not because something is wrong, but because your system doesn't fully believe that nothing is wrong. It's late in the evening now. Around 11:40. You're on the couch, TV playing quietly in the background. Earlier today, you finished your work. You answered your messages. You did what you planned to do. And still, you pick up your phone again. You scroll through your calendar. You check your email. You reread a message you already sent. There's no emergency. No conflict. But your stomach feels slightly unsettled, like you forgot a step in a recipe you've made 100 times. Your mind starts searching, did I miss something? Did I disappoint someone? Is tomorrow going to be harder than I think? If you've been there, you're not strange. You might know someone who lives like this. This is what feeling overwhelmed by nothing can look like when it's quiet. It's not chaos. It's accumulated mental weight. When this pattern shows up, one small shift can help you see it more clearly. Instead of asking, what's wrong? You might gently ask, what's unfinished? Then name 3 small things that are floating in your head. Just list them. No fixing yet. It could be, need to reply to Alex. Still thinking about that comment in the meeting. Haven't decided about next weekend. Often, simply naming the open loops reduces their size. Your mind relaxes a little when it sees them as items, not as a vague cloud. This works because overwhelm thrives in blur. When everything feels undefined, it all feels urgent. But when you make it concrete, even for a moment, your body gets evidence that this isn't one giant thread. It's just a few loose threads. Another gentle approach is to check the level of responsibility you're holding right now. On a normal day, ask yourself, is this actually mine to carry today? Maybe you're thinking about someone else's mood. Maybe you're pre-solving a problem that hasn't arrived. Maybe you're mentally preparing for every possible outcome of a conversation that hasn't happened. You don't have to drop all of it. Just notice it. Even recognizing, I'm holding more than this moment requires, can soften the pressure. It helps because your nervous system doesn't always know the difference between real danger and imagined responsibility. When you bring awareness to what's truly happening now, this room, this hour, this task, it has a chance to stand down a little. And there's one detail people often miss. Sometimes feeling overwhelmed by nothing is actually a sign that you've been strong for a while. Not in a dramatic way. Just in the steady, everyday way. You kept going. You kept organizing. You kept thinking ahead. And your system quietly absorbed it. So when there's finally a pause, all the stored tension surfaces at once. It can feel confusing. You look around and think, why now? But your body might be saying, now that it's safe enough to notice. This is for people who look fine on the outside but feel crowded on the inside. For people who can handle a lot, until they suddenly can't explain why they're tired. Feeling overwhelmed by nothing doesn't mean you're weak. It may mean you've been carrying invisible weight without naming it. Sometimes the first step isn't doing more. It's recognizing that nothing wasn't actually nothing. It was just quiet. And if you stay with that idea for a moment, you might feel a small shift. Not a dramatic release. Just a little more understanding. You're not reacting to emptiness. You're responding to too much inside. If you'd like more reflections like this, you're welcome to stay here, one quiet reason at a time.